Hello YouTube Divers, this is WaterEye 122 and I want to welcome you all back to another episode of Magic Metal Mondays. Now, this is going to be an interesting episode here today because we are, for one thing, we're getting back into album rankings. But I am going to re-rank a band that I've already done before on this series on Magic Metal Mondays. We're going to be revisiting the very first episode of this series, where I ranked Metallica's albums from worst to best. Now, the reason why I want to re-rank this series, why I want to re-rank Metallica's albums for that matter, is mainly because I re-watched the original ranking several times. And don't worry, I will not delete that video. It'll still be on YouTube. I mean, it's the very first episode. You can still go check it out. All that stuff. I will still have that on my channel. I will still have that on my playlist that I have for Magic Metal Mondays. It'll still be on YouTube. I'm not taking it down. The main reason why I want to re-rank Metallica is because I've rewatched the original ranking video, and I felt like I could have explained some of their albums better. So, that's why I'm re-ranking Metallica's albums. And also because back then, I was doing an album ranking for the very first time, so I felt like I wasn't really that detailed or that informative on Metallica, somewhat not. And especially considering the fact that my opinion on Metallica has changed since that video. I made that video a little over a year ago. It'll still be it'll still be on my channel. So, like I said, I'm not deleting it. It'll still be there for you to check out. But if you want a fresh new opinion, like if you're getting into Magic Metal Mondays, then start here, I guess, because this was the very first band that I ranked. Metallica was the first band I ever ranked on this series. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, number 10 on my ranking is still the 2003 album Saint Anger. Yeah, no surprise here. This is one of the worst albums I've ever heard. One of the worst albums I ever heard. This album is so bad, I can't even finish it. The songs are way too long. There's a lot of horrendous songs on here, like Dirty Window, Invisible Kid, Purify. I usually don't like to talk negative about this channel, on this channel, but Saint Anger is just an exception. I hate this album, like a lot of metal fans do. This is an abomination, and I know the band was going through a very unhealthy time. I think James Hetfield was coming out of rehab. Everything that they were doing in preparation for this album can be pretty much summed up in some kind of monster documentary. But speaking of which, the production on this album, I mean, come on, we all know that. I mean, we all know how bad the production is. The snare drums, man, when can Lars Ulrich find a non-trash can snare drum kit? Or just drum kit in general? Oh wait, on the previous two albums he has. Well, yeah. But yeah, this album was horribly produced. So ways that we can make this album better. One thing, remaster the entire album. Remaster it. And also rewrite some of the songs on here. Like, if you had more coherent lyrics, this would actually be a way better album. But this is a horrible album. A horrible album. And Metallica almost has a flawless discography. But this album had to come in and screw it all up. This is an atrocious album. I'm never re-listening to this again. Ever. Don't expect me to do an album review on this album, because it ain't happening. Now, quickly moving on, before I go on a freaking rampage, we're going to number 9, which is the 2016 album Hardwire to Self-Destruct. Now, I poorly explained this album on the original Metallica ranking video. In the original video, I said this was the only album from Metallica that I have yet to hear a song from. Well, I listened to the album, and it's way better than what I thought it was. Now, Spit Out the Bone, title track is great. Moth into Flame, Atlas Rise. Very great songs. Very great songs. Now, the only reason why I have this dropped back on my list is because I just prefer other albums. But this is light years better than Saint Anger. Light years better than Saint Anger. I will give you that. And I hope Metallica does make another album. I've heard rumors saying that they are making another album. I hope they make another album. And hopefully it'll get back to their thrash metal roots. But, you know, who knows. Now, let's move on. Number 8 is the 1997 album Reload. This is, I guess, a little bit of a controversial pick, because I know a lot of Metallica fans would probably have this album like near the bottom of the barrel. But for me, it's rather enjoyable. I mean, with songs like The Unforgiven 2, which is, in my opinion, one of their best songs. Fuel, Memory Remains, Devil's Dance is great. Bad Seed is an interesting song. Excuse me. Fixer and Low Man's Lyric, I think, is a pretty good song. This album, while it is not anywhere near close to metal, if you just go into this album with a different mindset, like if you go into this album thinking you're just gonna get rockabilly, this is not a bad album. Definitely not as bad. I definitely don't think it's as bad as people say it is. It does have some good stuff on here, but you know, there's a lot of filler, which drags this album a little bit lower for me. So, yeah. So with that said, Reload from 1997 coming in here at number 8. Number 7, the 2008 album Death Magnetic. This followed up Saint Anger, and this is a massive improvement over Saint Anger. I cannot even speculate how big of an improvement this is over Saint Anger. Yes, the production is still lackluster. Like it's very loud, and like with Saint Anger, a lot of the songs on this album are quite long. But you know, there are some of Metallica's best songs on here. My personal favorites are The Day That Never Comes, All Nightmare Long, Cyanide, The Unforgiven, and The Unforgiven 3, my favorite song on the album. Just a great song. Phenomenal sequel. Metallica definitely hit home runs with their 2 sequels of The Unforgiven. Now, basically my biggest gripe with the album is that the songs are a little bit too long and the production is not really that great. I mean, but then again, a lot of Metallica fans feel the same way, so I'm not going to jump into too much detail there. But like with Saint Anger, I would like to see a remaster, or at least a remix of this album. And maybe some of the songs cut down to make the album a little bit shorter, but overall, it's an enjoyable album. Now, number 6. This is probably the most controversial pick on this list. Number 6 is their debut album from 1983, Kill 'Em All. Now, I know what you're probably thinking right now. Oh my goodness gracious. How do you not have Kill 'Em All in the top 5? Well, as important and as classic of a metal album as Kill 'Em All is, I am not genuinely a big fan of this album. Now, yes. If you think that I'm not a big fan of this album, you're probably like, but you're not a real Metallica fan. Well, you know, we all have our preferences. And another thing is, I do not like James Hetfield's high-pitched Screecher Reaper vocals on here. Now, he does get better throughout Metallica's career, but here he just I mean, it fits what Metallica is doing on this album, like, it's a lot of their, it's like their most thrashy album, like with songs with Seek and Destroy and Hit the Lights and The Four Horsemen, Jump in the Fire, Metal Militia, songs like that. It does fit. And, you know, there are some moments on this album where the vocals don't bother me, like on the aforementioned Seek and Destroy and on Hit the Lights. But, you know, I'm just generally not a big fan of young James Hetfield's voice. I prefer the more melodic side of him instead of the more screamy side. And I think a lot of Metallica fans do, for that matter. But yeah, regardless, this is still a solid album. I just prefer other albums. So, let's get into those other albums. Now, number 5. If you thought my number 6 pick was controversial, here's number 5. Number 5 is the 1996 album Load. Load, I really enjoy this album. Now, yeah, there is some filler on this album, but, you know, the songs that hit hard. Like, take for example, Until It Sleeps, one of my all-time favorite Metallica songs. King Nothing, another one of their best songs. Thorn Within is one of my personal favorites. I adore that song. Mama Said is a very emotional ballad. Yeah, it's not metal in the slightest, but, you know, it's still a really, really emotional song if you take in the story behind that song. Outlaw Torn is pretty good. Cure is very suspenseful. Like, well, I mean, if you know that part, like, precious, precious Cure. That part, that just gives you chills. But yeah, there are some bad songs on this album, like Poor Twisted Me, and a couple of other songs like Ronnie, and, you know, a couple of other songs like House That Jack Built is kind of out of place. But overall, this is a solid album, and I really enjoy this. I know a lot of Metallica fans will disagree with me, but, you know, that's neither here nor there. Number 4, the 1991 self-titled album, also known as the Black Album. This album is a classic. I mean, it's now 30 years old, and in some shows Metallica has played this album in its entirety, or at least they have done that in the past. I mean, you got songs like Enter Sandman, Sad But True, Wherever I May Roam, Nothing Else Matters, The Unforgiven. That's 5 classics on one album, but, you know, you also have My Friend of Misery, Of Wolf and Man, The God Have Failed, Struggle Within. The list just goes on. This, as in terms of classic Metallica songs, is their most complete album. Is it their best album? No. Or otherwise, it would not be here at number 4. This is my number 4. I think a lot of Metallica fans would probably agree with me on that. They released some of their better albums back in the 80s after Kill 'Em All. But, you know, this is still a classic album, and, you know, I really think it deserves the popularity it gets. Number 3 is the 1984 album Ride the Lightning. Now, in terms of melodic vocal usage from James Hetfield on Kill 'Em All compared to Ride the Lightning is just astronomical. Hetfield definitely does some more singing on Ride the Lightning, which is one of the reasons why I think Ride the Lightning is better than Kill 'Em All. The production is also better than Kill 'Em All. The songs are more cohesive. I mean, there's already a lot more classic stuff on here, like For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, Creeping Death. I mean, there's some other great gems off of this album as well, like Call of Cthulhu. Really great instrumental. Heck, I even like the song Escape. Title track is great. Fight Fire with Fire is one of the best openers they ever made. It's killer. It's freaking killer. this is an amazing album, and it's a classic. This is, in my opinion, really the first classic Metallica album. Because whereas with Kill 'Em All, they didn't really have all their ideas in yet. And then on Ride the Lightning, they came in with something really proving. Like they were with Ride the Lightning, they made a freaking statement. And the statement was, "Here we are, we're Metallica. Let's show. We've already shown what we can do on Kill 'Em All. Here we are. This is what you're gonna get from us." And you know, with that stuff that they gave us, led to some amazing albums down the road. So let's get into them. Number 2, the 1988 album, And Justice for All. Aside from the production of this album, like, you know, I wish we could have heard Jason Newsted's bass, because this was the first album to feature Jason Newsted. He kind of got a rude welcoming by not even hearing his credits heard on the album. But aside from that, this is a classic metal album. I mean, everything from the song One, which is one of the best songs ever written, not just by Metallica, but by anybody. Blackened, Harvester of Sorrow, the title track, The Shortest Straw, To Live is to Die, I believe that's the name of that song. I could be wrong. There's just so much great stuff on this album. This is a near flawless album. This is one of Metallica's masterpieces. I will give them that. This album, I'm just speechless. This album is just so great. It's so great. And this was really the last really thrashy album they put out. But what a way to go out. if you can even say that. But overall, And Justice for All is a killer album, and if you haven't heard it, go check it out right now. Right after we get into the number 1 album from Metallica. And at this spot, this is one of my all-time favorite albums. It is a freaking legendary album. We're talking about the 1986 album Master of Puppets. Still my favorite Metallica album. Still one of my all-time favorite albums. This is a freaking classic. I mean, the title track, we all know how great the title track of Master of Puppets is. It's my favorite Metallica song, and it's my second favorite metal song of all time. Of all freaking time. Behind I Want Out by Halloween, but you know, I talk a little bit more in detail on my top 100 all-time favorite hard rock and heavy metal songs, but that's neither here nor there. Battery is one of the best thrash metal songs ever written. I mean, Damage Incorporated, Welcome Home Sanitarium, Thing That Should Not Be, Orion, one of the best instrumental songs ever written. And Leper Messiah. The list just goes on. Sadly, this would be the last album to feature bassist Cliff Burton before he was tragically killed in a bus accident. But yeah, this was a solid way to go out. And you know, this album is a classic. It's a phenomenal album. It's freaking flawless. The production is punchy, like it throws punches in your face. This is, like, what more is there to say? It's freaking Master of freaking Puppets. One of the best metal albums ever made. And you know, rest in peace, Cliff. This was your swan song. What a way to go out. The drumming by Lars Ulrich is just jaw-dropping. The guitar solos from Kirk Hammett is astounding. James Hetfield's vocals is unbelievable. And of course, Cliff Burton on the bass. Yeah, it's solid. Freaking solid. this is a masterpiece. What more do you want me to say? So with that said, that concludes this edition of Magic Metal Mondays. And don't worry, I do not have any plans to re-rank any other bands. I just wanted to re-rank Metallica because why the frick not? This was the same list that I had in, well, at least more of the same list that I had back on the original video. But, you know, I just talked about it. I just talked a little bit more about it here. So with that said, that concludes this edition of Magic Metal Mondays. Thank you so much for watching, my fellow YouTube divers. This is WaterDive 122 signing out, ready to dive and more fun on YouTube. Thanks for watching.